Welcome to the Know Your Legacy podcast. I'm your host, Vipul Basania, and today's guest is Akeem Haynes. Akeem is a Olympic bronze medalist for the 100-meter sprint. He's also an author that's working towards his second book now, and is inspiring the world through his podcast, Underdog Mentality, and is helping people adapt to and overcome challenges and adversities in their own life. So Akeem, thank you so much for being here, bro.
Glad to be here, man. Thanks for having me, brother.
I know we're trying to do this for a long time. So I'm excited to share your story, to share your wisdom, to share everything that you've learned so far. So I guess for those who don't know just yet or don't have a clear idea, what is the underdog mentality?
What is the underdog mentality? That's a great question. Somebody asked me this like literally this morning before here. The underdog mentality is just that notion of you may not have the best start. You may not have the best advantages, but honestly, your disadvantages are probably your strengths. So the underdog mentality is all about not making excuses for what you don't have, but literally extracting everything that you do have and finding a way to implement that and put that into your everyday life. Underdog is the best position to be in because nobody expects anything from you.
Yeah, I
But
love
you
that.
do.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. It's just your back's against the wall. You've got limited resources, and you just got to make it happen in some shape or form. And those make the best movies as well, like the underdog movies, like Rocky, and we were talking about Eminem before, like
Mhm.
So have you, just on that topic, whilst we're on there, like, do you have any favorite underdog movies that come to mind that you can share with people?
Man, I gotta say, one of my favorite movies, man, is The Pursuit of Happiness. Because Chris Gardner, you, you've seen the movie, man. I don't think you can watch the movie without feeling something from it. But here's a man who put everything on the line with a son and a family and everything to put something that he can see that only he believes. And he has living in washrooms and with his son and everything like that. So I just think being able to come from that position when you're at your lowest point, where do you go? Where do you dig from? Where does that come from? You can't, that's certain things that can't be taught. It can only be experienced. And I think from that, every time I watch that movie, I get rejuvenated and get something from it. Because I'm just like, man, if a person like him can do it, oh, I definitely can do it.
Yeah, man, that's what it's about as well. Like just chasing after what it is you want to do. And I've talked about this with so many guests. It's just like the journey is bigger than you. Like everyone has fears, everyone has insecurities and a fear of judgment. But if you think about, if I actually do this thing that I'm scared to do, who else will it inspire? Because maybe there's someone out there who wants to give up, commit suicide, or kill their dreams. But because they see you do it, that video, that post, whatever it is you've done, because you had the courage to do it, they'll think the same way that you did, looking at Chris Gardner, like, okay, if he can do it, then I can do it as well. And that's what it's about. So I love what you're doing. So let's just get into the story, I guess. Like, how do you end up in the Olympics? Like, first of all, because not everyone gets a chance to go that far and compete at that level. So like, just take us through the journey of how you got there.
Yeah, man. So honestly, like track and field, I didn't want to do track and field like that in all seriousness. I started taking it seriously in the 11th grade. I was a dual sport athlete. I was playing football and I was running track, but I just wanted to play football. I didn't necessarily care about track like that because track is the one thing that's every sport's punishment. I'm like, I don't want to run. What am I doing that for? But at the same time, I had a teacher that said, Akeem, you can always come back to football, but you won't always get a chance to be an Olympian. I was like, he got a point there. But I never necessarily thought about the Olympics. My whole goal for the sport of track and field was to get my education paid for because I didn't have the means to do it. But I figured I can get myself a full scholarship and get that taken care of. Now, staying ready and prepared for the opportunity that comes. Like I went to two. So in 2012, I was there. Um, More of a learning curve, experiences from it. But 2016, the second time, I'm a firm believer in if you've been in something the first time and you get an opportunity to do it again, then it's time to take advantage of that. Like don't wait until the moment is gone for you to understand that, man, I probably should have took advantage of that. Don't wait for that, because once you wait for that, that opportunity is already gone. So you got to stay in the preparation, because when it comes, you got to be prepared for it. And when it comes and you're not, you just lost the opportunity that may not be able to come again. Very few people get a second chance to do anything, let alone a first. So for me, during that time, I just disciplined myself with my nutrition more than ever, with my distractions more than ever, what I was doing, my treatment with my body, my mental, how I attack practice, all these different components into it. And I literally gave that year everything that I had. And I saw improvements in my time, training, what I felt like, what I didn't feel like, what I didn't like. I just became very meticulous with just the discipline. You know, I think anybody can achieve great things in their lives, but are you disciplined enough to say no to certain things? I think that's one of the biggest confusions people make. They say they want something, but are you disciplined enough to actually mean the no? You know, so for me, I just focused on that whole thing. You know, wherever you put your focus, it goes. So for me, um, the whole run up to 2016 and the Olympics and the medal was just about focus. I really don't think doing the work is the hard part. I think anybody can do the work once they put their mind to it, but not everybody has the discipline to sustain it when things aren't going well. You know, so for me, it was more of a mental battle than more of a physical battle.
What would you say are some of the difficulties you faced during that time? Was it just some of the, I guess, some of the thoughts that you had, or was it the diet? Was it the workouts? Like, what was the difficulty that you were facing that you felt like, man, like if I can overcome this, then I can see the finish line?
Yeah. I remember my coach came over to me in 2016. We were doing starts. It was a block day, and he could tell that like something was off. So he comes over and he says, "Man, are you bored?" I'm like, "Yep." It's just getting up every day and understanding that your Monday is going to look the same. Your Tuesday is going to look the same. Your Wednesday is going to look the same. Your Thursday is going to look the same. Your Friday, your Saturday, generally are all probably going to look the same. But can you find a way to make the same routine exciting and be better at it? I would say that was probably the hardest thing for me, man, because I'm a man that likes to do different things. So for me, doing the same thing continuously, even when you're sore and you're tired and you know the day is going to suck because it sucked last week, so it's going to suck this week. But you know that the sacrifice is going to make a great reward. So for me, it was just that, man.
You know, the craziest thing is, as you were talking, I was just thinking, like, you're right. Every day does look the same when you're trying to chase a goal or a dream, but when you look back, nothing's the same. I don't know if you found that
Absolutely.
to be the case. every
Mhm.
every day you wake up and go to sleep, you think, ah, it's the same again tomorrow, same again tomorrow. You look back after a year or two, nothing is the same. Like you're a
Mhm.
completely different character. So, well, like when you went to the first 2012 Olympics, like how did you end up there? What has to actually happen for you to qualify? For those who aren't really familiar, do you have to qualify certain I guess athletically you have to be built a certain way? Do you have to hit certain numbers before
Mhm.
you get qualified? Like how does that process work?
Yeah, so there's two standards. So in 2012, I went for the 4x1, but there's two standards generally. So there's an A standard and a B standard. The A standard for the 100 meters is, I think at that time it was 10:16, and the B standard was 10:23, 24. So the way it works, the A standard, you got to hit the A standard just one time. And then if you have the A standard, then you got to finish top three at your nationals. But if you have the B standard, you got to hit it a couple times and then still finish top three. So that's how it was for the first one and then the second one. But then the 4x1, it's just a compilation of the top six finishes in the 100 meters. And then they go on the relay pool. But usually it's standard. You hit the standard one time and then you'll be good to go as long as you finish top three
Yeah,
in your trials.
yeah, makes sense. What was your fastest time, just out of interest, in the end?
My fastest time ever was 10:06. Was my fastest time I've ever ran in 100 meters.
Wow, yeah. Do you know what the fastest time in history is for 100 meters?
9:58. That would be Usain Bolt.
Fuck. So you weren't that far. Well, I guess every second counts. Like it's difficult to just take off every second, but still, that's not that far away, is it? Like I don't know what in the Olympic
it's
world.
it's it's crazy, man. Because on paper it doesn't seem like that, but in the race, it's light years away. It's light
Yeah.
years away, man.
So how long did it take for you to like? Actually, let's start here. So, what was the slowest time that you had, just so people can see the difference in your slowest to fastest, and obviously how much work you had to put in to get there.
Yeah. So the first time I ran in the 10th grade, I ran 11:03. And then the next year from 1103, I started taking it seriously, started training more. I went from 1103 to 1047. And then the next year I actually had an injury, so I didn't improve that year. Then in one of my first year in college, didn't improve. I was still recovering from the injury. So that's now 2 years of not improving. So my second year in college, I started improving again. I went from 1047 to 1020, 1023. Then my fourth year in college, I didn't improve again. Then my next year when I went professionally, I went from 1023 to 1015. And then later on that same year, I ran 1006. So improvements in track and field, man, is tough. But just like in anything, you know, I also ran 60 meters. And in the 12th grade, I ran my fastest indoor time in 6:73. Now, I didn't get another personal best until 5 years later in the 60 meters. That's a huge span of, that's like 5-6 seasons of no improvements in that discipline, in that event. But just like in anything, it's going to take a lot of hours and time to be able to build something, but your foundation has to be solid. And for me, I always said, how can I find a way to persevere with positivity and extracting the good despite the bad and the negative that's happening? If you can find a way to extract the good in the bad, your character is going to be built and you're going to be somebody different. Your resilience, you're going to be a different, resilient person, version of yourself. But your foundation has to be right. So for me, I never necessarily always worried about the progression. I knew it was going to come at some point, but was I going to be disciplined enough to stick with it?
That makes a lot of sense. It's a mental game more than anything, it sounds like. So what would you say your biggest lessons were from all the training and the journey that you took leading up to the Olympics?
Man, I think I realized that I was working too hard. in especially in track and field, the harder you work in the races, you don't run as fast. So I had to find a way to not do that. And sometimes I would train so hard that I would burn myself out for competition because I'd put every energy into my training. Because I'd be like, yo, you're supposed to train hard. You train hard, you get results. I gotta grind. I gotta grind. But you gotta grind smarter so you don't have to train harder.
What is it? I've never heard it put that way. Like I didn't even know that was a thing. You know, like for an athlete to think that way, because you know everything that's shown on Instagram, on YouTube, everything is just work harder. You know, put in the hours, and that makes a lot of sense because repetition is what gets you results. So you learn the craft better. But then, how did that work out for you? So like, if you just paint the picture of working too hard, burning out, and then what does working smarter look like?
So for me, I think one, you got to know your body type. You got to know your threshold of what you can take and what you cannot take. For me, I was a power sprinter, not an elastic sprinter. So for me, where some of my teammates, they would train Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday would be all solid hard sessions. For me, I didn't work like that. So for me, my hard days were tailored around Tuesdays and Saturdays. So Monday would be like a warm-up introduction to Tuesday. Tuesday, I would hit it hard. Wednesday, back off a little bit, recover. Thursday, do something to keep the body flowing. Wednesday, similar to Thursday. For Friday, similar to Wednesday, would be a lighter day. Then I would be getting ready for Saturday. So my main 2 days are focused around Tuesday and Saturday. So the first thing, you got to know your body type for sure and understand that on the days that you're supposed to train hard, give it everything you've got. But to be able to recover and to attack it again is another thing. So for me, I always focus on those 2 days. Once I realized, and my coach and I realized that, man, you can't train like everybody else. Your body's different. You learn differently. You're wired differently. You need more rest than the rest of these guys. And I had to be okay with that and trust it because he's the coach. So while everybody else was training 4 times a week for hard sessions, their body was used to it. Mine wasn't. And I had to understand that they may seem like they're working is harder, but I'm actually working the same. It's just my threshold isn't as powerful as theirs is.
I love that because it's just looking at fitness or health from a individual perspective, not just following what the magazine says or what everyone else says, because it's so easy to do that nowadays. Like there's so many workouts and so much information and so many things that are said as just like the standard thing. Like let's say, just take bodybuilding for an example. It's like you have to do 6 to 8 reps, or like the standard thing that they tell you to do, or you have to run for 20 minutes. It's like that might not work for everyone. And just to give a quick example, like I realized that for myself, for like when I used to lift a lot of weights, I did, 6 to 8 reps and just focusing on 2 body parts a day, just the standard thing that tell you magazines. Yeah. And then I heard someone say full body workouts is what works for me. Like that made that person grow really crazy. I was like, full body, can you really do that? Can you work out every single body part like 5 days a week? That's overtraining. Like, and then I started researching. I was like, let me just try it. I tried it, and it's just the strength was just going up like crazy, because you're doing deadlifts, squats, bench press, like every 2 days. You're just doing that over and over again, and it just worked. I love it, and that's what I continue to do, because I just feel like the whole body's working rather than just isolating to muscles. So it's a personal journey. You have to figure out what's right for you. So it seems like you found the training that was that worked for you, ended up being a winning formula. So through all of that, because it sounds like it's quite a rigorous journey, what kept you motivated, like in the darker days?
Man, I think for me, I use the pain from my past as fuel to keep me going. I think a lot of people, they don't want to tap into certain parts of their lives because it may bring them to a dark place. And completely, I get it for sure. But on the other hand, you got to use what you've been through so it doesn't happen again. I think everybody needs some type of motivation. I mean, motivation first ultimately starts from within yourself, for sure. You got to wake up and be motivated for yourself to be the best that you can be. However, on the moments when it does get tough, you do need to look at some external things, whether it's your family, your spouse, your siblings, whatever the case may be. But a lot of the things that we don't take and use it to push us is the pain that we've been through. Pain either makes you bitter or better, depending on what you extract from it. So for me, I always use, I said, I made a promise 12 years ago that that'll never happen again. So I got to get up today and I got to make sure that it doesn't. And it starts with what I'm doing right now. So for me, man, I use everything. I even got to a point sometimes where if I didn't feel like I was being challenged enough, I started using the word they. I didn't know who they was, but I created a they. They don't want me to graduate university, so I got to go tutoring. I got to go do this. They don't want me to do this, so I make sure that I have to do it. Sometimes you got to create your own adversity if you feel like you're slipping a little bit, if you feel like you're not taking full advantage of certain things. So for me, man, I just use the pain because I realize this. Your pain will teach you more about prosperity through adversity and opposition than your success ever will. I think success teaches you a lot of things, but your pain of what you've been through and the setbacks and the heartbreak and all that stuff is essential to every single individual. But you can't look at it as a delay. You just got to look at it as, man, what do I need to extract from this moment to bring over for what's to come? That's kind of how I handle my life, man. Not even just in sport, but everything, every opposition that I face.
So it's playing a mental game with yourself to help you get through the tough times, just recalling some of the memories, I guess, or some of the things that were difficult in your life. So I think, why do you think people are scared to go there? Like if because so many people say like that's their fuel, like anger or pain or something that was difficult and challenging. And I tend to do that as well. Like I try and bring it up and then think like, if I don't do it, then I'm going to prove them right. And I don't want to do that. So I want to push through this. So why do you think people try and avoid that?
That's a great question, man. And I've been guilty of this too, for sure. I mean, we all do it. I think the one thing is we all get to a certain age in our life where at the beginning stages, we're trying to prove people wrong. That's a motivator, trying to prove people wrong. But then I think through a certain age of maturity, we realize that, man, it's not about proving people wrong. It's about proving ourselves right. And the first acknowledgement to that, have you made amends with your past, whatever it was? Can you discuss it? Can you talk about it? not a lot of people are willing to talk about it because society says you can't show weakness, especially in the male community. We don't show weakness. That's not what we do. However, everybody hurts. You can, physical wounds, you can see. You can see when somebody broke a bone. You can see, you go to the doctors, you get a shot, they put a band on, you can see that. But there's a lot of people who are bleeding and you can't see it. So they think that they have to just suppress it, and you suppress it and you suppress it rather than talking about it with the people who you know are there for you. And I think that's ultimately what it is, man.
Mm. No, it's something to think about, because I think a lot of people, if they're stuck in their lives, they can bring up those past memories just to reignite that fire, you know, like just to get them moving again. So what would you say are some of the, I guess, painful memories that are still with you today that you tend to bring up, or the stories that you resurface to help you through any adversity in your life?
Yeah, man. I would say the main one, man, being homeless at 13 was definitely one that I always extract from, coming home, no heat, no water, no food, going to school, not eating, um, lucky to have 2 or 3 meals for the week, and just all these different things, all these promises. I said, man, that'll never happen again. Never, never, because I know what it felt like and I didn't like it. So why would I want to relive something I didn't like? And if I have the power and the control to make sure it doesn't happen again, I got to take advantage of that so it doesn't happen again. So I would say those things, man, for sure.
Did you at that age, were you aware of what was happening? Like, you didn't have those things, but did you know like what caused it, or were you just like, oh, this is just the way life is?
Um, I think it's one of those things where at the age you kind of just roll with it. You're kind of just like, okay, well, now what's next? Why did this happen? And to some extent, it's helped me. But then to understand, it's just like, man, sometimes we can get in this notion of thinking this is how it's always going to be. And then so even as much positivity as we put in ourselves, that mentality is still there. We don't pursue the joy as much. We don't know how to accept it. We don't take certain things that we should take. We take it for granted. So for me at that time, it was just, man, I don't know why this is happening. I don't know what's going to come from it, but I know that I'm here. Now, how do we make sure that we don't get back here? How do we fix it? I'm not talking temporarily. I'm talking about how do we fix it in the long term so it doesn't happen again. And at 13, you're still trying to figure things out. But I just kind of just roll with it. I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah, of course. Do you think it made you grow up a lot quicker?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I've been pretty grown since I was like 6. I learned how to cook. My mom taught me how to cook when I was like 8, taught me how to clean laundry and everything. I could do everything for myself that, as I realized, most people couldn't do when they got to a certain age. But it's the experiences, man. It's the experiences that we think. I'll put it this way, man. I heard a pastor say, sometimes we don't see the blessings because we're carrying on the burdens. And
Mm.
that always spoke to me. I'm just like, how many times have we been in the situation where we're completely stressed, like extremely stressed, and we don't know what the heck is going on? Why is this not prospering? But take a moment to think about, man, what are the good things in that moment? Chances are, if you look hard enough, you'll find something.
Yeah, it's just a perspective, like just taking a step back and realizing the positives, or the pluses that you've got in your life, rather than focusing on the negative. Because I think you said earlier, where your focus goes, your energy flows, and it's
Mhm.
just it. Like this thing up here is just it's a computer. And I was talking to someone on the podcast yesterday, and he was saying like, look, man, like whatever you put into here, the positive affirmations and negative affirmations, like it will manifest whatever it is. So it's down to you to program it with the right things that you want to see happen in your life. So it's pretty crazy, man. So like, what would you say are the biggest lessons you took away from your parents, like your mom, your dad, and if they were even like present at that age, what would you say the biggest lessons that still stick with you today?
Man, I learned a lot of invaluable lessons from the both of them. I learned what sacrifice is, from my mom. I learned the value of hard work from my dad. When I was 6, my dad he worked a year straight because where I grew up, there was a lot of things happening, like deaths and stuff. I was born in Jamaica. So the place that I was at wasn't a good space, you know. So my dad knew something that, you know, we didn't. He was like, you know, if Akeem goes to Canada, he can be 101 things, but if he stays here, he's limited. So we just worked the whole year straight, no days off. I mean, no sick days, nothing, nothing. He just worked and worked and worked, saved the money, and then told my mom and I, go to Canada, you know, make it happen out there.
What did
And
he? Sorry, what, just to so people understand, like what was he doing? Like what was his job?
managing restaurants.
Okay.
Yeah, managing restaurants, managing hotels, bunch of managerial stuff and stuff like that. But he also did a lot of side stuff, like, you know, running shops and stuff. You know, in Jamaica, you it's not hard to have a business in something. You know, you just go and you just do it and you make it happen. You can get the resources because people live off the earth, the land there. So but yeah, man, so he did everything that he could, you know, and I learned the value of hard work from him. You know, he didn't make excuses. He didn't say, I don't feel like doing this, I'm not doing that. He just went and just did it despite how he felt. And then I learned the value of sacrifices from my mom. The beautiful thing about having a child early is that you get to grow up with your parents. And I got to do that. Was she ready for a child? Probably not. Which 17, 18-year-old really is? Even if you're in your 30s, 40s, you're still never ready for a child, no matter how many books that you may read. Um, but you know, she put a lot of stuff on hold. She worked 3 jobs when I was in high school, so I didn't really get to see her too much. But at the same time, when I did, I saw, man, here's a lady that is doing everything in her power to make sure we have roof over our head and food when we can. And I said, man, I got to make sure that I make myself right. I could have went and skipped school as much as I wanted to. She was never home. I could have done what I wanted to. But when somebody is investing in that much in you, you can't take that for granted. You see, it's one thing for someone to say, oh, I believe in you. But it's another thing for them to say that I invest in you. It's different. You know, I think one of the main things that has helped me is having the right people and the right counsel around you. We hear this all the time. This isn't the first time you're hearing this, and I'm sure your listeners, not a first time. But how many of you are really taking it seriously? How many of you are really, really evaluating who you're around? And not around every now, I'm talking about around all of the time. Because whatever that you're around, it's you're more likely to your environment is going to change you long before you can change your environment. But most people don't. They're just like, no, I'm good. I'm strong-willed. I can do it. You're not that strong.
Yeah, there's a lot of outside influence that can get to us more easily than we think, and I think it's something because, you know, I worked in a job that taught me a lot of skills, but the people that I was surrounded by weren't the type of people that I would naturally surround myself with. They were just like, I was just there to learn the skills. So I'm glad I had the experience, but the people that I was working with, they weren't there for the same reason as me, and so their lifestyle, their mindset, everything was different. And I was just like you said, I was the person that thought, you know, I'm strong-willed, they can't get to me. But over time, I saw it happen. I saw it happen over time. It's not after a day or a week. It's what we said before. Like, you look back after a year and you think, wow, like, you know, I'm not doing the same habits or the same routines that I did at the start of the year. I've slowly let it go. It's one decision at a time. That's how it happens.
Yes.
You change one decision at a time over the year, whether that's negative or positive. That's how everything changes. You know, after a number of days or months have passed, you look back, you think everything's different. So, no, that's important, man. And what do you remember, like, what life was like in Jamaica back then? I don't know if you've got any fond memories of what life was like. You know, a lot of the listeners probably haven't been to that part of the world. I certainly haven't. I'd love to go. So if you could just paint a picture, you know, some of the things that you remember from there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Jamaica's a beautiful place, man. I remember everything. Um, however, in every country, there's 2 sides to it. There's the good side, you see, you know, they show you the things on Jamaica, the blue water, the beautiful resorts, all the food, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. But on the other hand, there's a side of Jamaica that you don't want to see, you know, and it's continuing to happen. Right? There's some crazy stuff going on right now back there. Um, however, um, I grew up on the other side. So man, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and the way that, for example, the way that they take showers out there and bathe and stuff. And every house is different, but my grandparents were old school. So they would have this big barrel, huge barrel attached up to um, the roof in a filter. So the way that they would catch water would be rainwater. So the rainwater would come down the gutters and go through the filter, and then so and so. And then you boil the water, of course, when you're trying to drink it and cook with it and everything. But one of the memories that reminds me the most, man, is I remember taking a bath there. You know, I filled up my bucket, and then I walked over to the back of the house, and I set up 4 sheets. You know, just to for you know for privacy and all that. But one of the memories that I love the most, man, was I was taking a bath, and I was singing songs. But when I my visual, what I could see, because my grandmother and my grandparents lived on a big hill, so they were overseeing the mountains, overseeing everything, all the land. All you could see was trees, beautiful sky. And in that moment, you realize what really is important in life. Those things where it's just like, man, when am I ever going to see and capture this beauty ever again? That peace at this moment that I have, that this beautiful view, water that I can bathe with, soap, but this view and this calmness in this moment, there's nothing happening, but I'm one with myself, God, and this atmosphere. That's the one memory that always stuck out to me, man, because it's the small things in this life that are often taken for granted. Because when we don't have things, we're just like, man, we don't got nothing going for us. Nothing will ever happen for us. But in the hindsight of everything, you have everything that you need right there. And if you aren't thankful and grateful and appreciative of everything that you have, what makes you think that you will be blessed with more?
Mm, that's yeah, so true, man. It's so true because if you can't be grateful for it now, you're not going to be grateful for it when you've got more. Like that's where the gap in happiness comes from. And I've just come to learn that myself as well. Like it's the small things. Like I try and to keep things in perspective. I try like when I feel like I'm not getting anywhere, things aren't moving the direction that I want them to go in. I just come back to basics. Like thank God for this amazing night's sleep. Thank you for allowing me the chance to walk again another day,
Yeah,
to,
absolutely.
to see again, to feel, to touch. Because there's people out there that can't do that. They've not been able to wake up today. Maybe they've got come down with a disease today. Someone in their family's died. Like it's the small things, as you said. As you get older, you realize those are the things that I really appreciate. And it's sad because most people don't realize until it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
And that's perspective being forced onto them. They don't try and put it into perspective before that. Then they're forced to see things in perspective because it's like, oh, now I realize money isn't everything, or chasing this financial goal wasn't everything. Like the small things like my health, which I don't have, are the things that matter to me most. So it's just about keeping things in perspective from the beginning. Because if you can enjoy it now, you'll enjoy it when you have more. So
Man, you
um,
know what's crazy, man, is I'll use this as an analogy. You know, when you think about Christmas, right? You know, when you're young, you think about Christmas, man. What are you thinking about? Opening up these gifts. You know what I'm saying? You're waking up and you see the trees there, the trees beautiful. You know, they're making hot chocolate, eggnog, all these different things. There's cookies, there's everything is there. But you're not worried about the beautiful things about the food, and you're worried about the presents. 5 years old, presents. 8, 9, presents. 14, 15, presents, but not necessarily. 18, 19, cool. If I get it, cool. If I don't, whatever. 25, I don't really, we'll see. 30, though, then that thing starts to change. I say that to say this, like maturity throughout the years of these things. You're not worried about the material things of presence. Now the greatest gift that we can give and we can have is time. We want the time. We want the time. We want the time. We want the time. I've never in my life, at least in the stories that I have heard, when situations when people are sick, they say, "Oh man, if only I had that. If only I had that new house." I don't be thinking about that when they're sick. They're thinking about, man, I wish I had more time. I wish people cared about me enough to come visit me when I'm sick. I wish I wish that I wish I treated these people better. I wish that time and the treatment is so much more. so much more inviting than the material things. And it does take a toll to get that. But I just think in life and in time, the maturity of your personal development grows, and you start to realize what's really important.
Yeah, you're 100% right, man. That's definitely the realization that I've had as well. And a lot of the people that I speak to, like that are successful, that's the one thing that they say. That's why like when I watch shows like Shark Tank, for example, and this, you get someone like Mark Cuban who's like, oh, this is not worth my time, this idea. And in my head, I'm thinking like, before I used to think, oh, that's selfish. Like, you know, just because
Yeah.
you've got money, you want to give someone else time. But no, it's because they've reached that level,
Hmm.
they realize that my time is worth more than money. And I never understood that
Yes.
before, but now I get it, because it's, you can't replenish time. Money you can replenish. So if this idea is not good, I'm not going to waste time on it. It doesn't matter if I've got money to invest in it. I don't want to even give it a thought if I know it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to benefit me. So what's the point? So I think, I don't know if you agree, but that's how we should think about like people and resources and ideas, and the things that we choose to give our energy to, because every day it's depleting more and more.
Absolutely, man. I think I think you said it right there, man. Time is currency, man. People don't realize that, man. Like whether you give it or you don't, you can't get it back. But at the same time, you might as well give it to the things that's meaningful and the things that you value. I really think that a lot of people say yes to everything. You say yes
Mm.
to everything, you'll waste everything. Because you can't make everybody happy. You can't please everybody. You're always going to be a bad guy in somebody's story. So
That's
you might as well use the time that you have to incorporate it with the people that you care about, the things that you want to do, that you're passionate about, the things that you see add value in your life and match up to your morals, your character, and your values. I just think time, man, and I've realized that over time too. You know, time is just so precious. Time is so precious. I always wondered how someone can get into a position and they can work and they can work and they can work and they can work, and then at 50 years old, when they're just like, you know, I'm gonna retire, and then they take that week off and they realize, man, I haven't done anything with my life,
yes, yeah, yeah.
and they're
No,
and
no.
they're just like, whoa, I've been working financially, the family's good, I'm good, I don't got to worry about that, but I haven't lived. I haven't given my time to anything that I care about. Jim Carrey said this, man. I think his dad said this on this interview that I heard like maybe about 6, 7 years ago. He says, you know, you can fail at doing something you don't love, so why not take a chance on doing something that you do love? You can fail at both, but at least I will enjoy one over the other.
It's very true, very true. No, it's just, again, this one word keeps coming back to me. It's perspective, man. It's just a different way to look at the same situation, man. It's just how you choose to look at it. And the one thing that helps me keep perspective as well is just the fact that realizing your own mortality. I guess that's tied in with
Mm,
time. It's just like realizing I'm going to be dead anyway. So should I really be caring about this? Should I really be worried about this? Should I really not take that risk? Like, what's it worth? Because if I've only got a certain period of time, do I want to use it to conform, to make people happy, who, by the way, at the end of the day, are not going to be there anyway? At some point, they're going to be gone. So their opinions and judgments are not going to matter. Or do I want to use it to have an adventurous life that at the end, I'm not going to regret, but I'll be rejoiceful for it?
mhm.
That's definitely a big driver for me that I try and drive home to people. But I mean, like, you qualified in 2016. Like, first of all, let me just ask you, how did it feel when you got that medal? Before we go into some of the other questions, like when they announced it, like if you can paint the picture, take us back
Yeah.
to the time of when they announced it, how you felt, like what was that whole experience like?
Yeah, man. So I'll do one better and just talk about that whole day.
Yeah, do it.
uh, so we ran the heats in the early morning, probably around like 8, 9. You know, it went well. You know, we were like third going in, and we ran one of Canada's fastest times, like the third or fourth fastest time. And you know, we went back to the hotel, and you know, the rest of the guys were kind of just chilling. We were all just chilling, you know, just trying to not think about it too much. And then I remember, you know, I took a little nap, and then I woke up, and then I went to one of my teammates' room, knocked on his door, you know, just to make sure that everybody was up because we had to go in like 3 hours. And I knocked on the door. He was up, and I was getting ready to walk away. His name was Brendan Rodney, and he was like, "Yo." I'm like, "Yeah." He was like, "Yo, we need this." I was like, "Yeah." He was just like, "No, yo, we need this." I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't worry." but but that was the attitude that we had, right? So we were going in, and I remember getting there to the warm-up track, and we're warming up, talking about like the biggest of the big dogs are there. Anybody who is a top dog in the sport is here. This is the Olympics, right? So you got you got Bolt there, you got Asafa Powell, you got Justin Gatlin, you got everybody who is there is there. You know, UK had a strong team. They had a very strong team, you know. So I remember warming up, and I remember warming up, getting my music right. And then for a split second, and I think this happens to everybody at the perfect moment. You prepare for something as much as you can, doing everything that you can. However, human nature is to, when you're at a high pressure situation, there is a certain small doubt that comes into your mind. And in that moment, when that doubt comes, what's going to separate you from prospering and from you not getting to the level of where you want to be is, what do you pay attention to when that voice comes? So I was warming up, and then for a split second, I was looking around. I was just like, "Holy crap, this is the Olympic final right here." It's like, man, I don't know if I should be on the scene with them. Like, these guys' times are ridiculous. Like, my times ain't that good. At that split moment, I was just like, "Yo, what are you doing? Why are you talking like this? You're here for a reason. You're here just like how they are. You work how hard like they work hard. So stop all this nonsense and let's warm up and let's go, man. Stop all this doubts and stuff like that. We don't got time for it. It's time to get this." And in that span of doing that, that was literally like 30 seconds. So as soon as I snapped out of that little 30-second doubt, then it was just on, right? We go into the call room, and every team is there sitting around the table or sitting around in the call room, and they're all serious. I'm just like, man, you guys got to lighten up, right? But our guys, me, Brendan, Andre, and Aaron, and Ajamale Balade, he ran in the heats, but it was the four of us in there, and we were all there just cool, calm, and collected. I'm just like, "Yo, fellas, it's time," right? So we get in there. Now they're doing the introductions. And this is crazy because I never do this, right? Introductions come in. I'm going down to my starting block. And I took a moment to just look at what the surroundings was. I'm looking at the stadium. The stadium is filled, screaming. All I see is cameras taking pictures, lights, and people. And I said, man, wow. I said, man, we are here. We are here. This is going to be a show. Like, it's time. Like, everybody's watching. Like, everything that you've been doing for the past year, 4 years that you've been training to get to this point is here. So you got to take advantage of it. And the time is now, not yesterday. No, it's now. So I remember getting to the blocks with that kind of attitude and that kind of enthusiasm, that kind of spirit. And the gun went, and I was just like, man, how can I get the stick to Aaron as quickly as possible while still getting a little lead? And if you watch the film, I haven't watched the film in a while, but if I watched it, I'm just like, man, I rolled out that day just because I was just like, yo, it's time. When the time and the opportunity is here, you got to seize that. And you can't let the doubts and these things pop into your head. You got to talk to it and be like, look, I work for this. I don't need these doubts in my head. I deserve to be here. But you have to look within yourself to actually know and accept that. See, a lot of people say they deserve something, but haven't put the work to actually get what they deserve. You haven't been honest with yourself. There's been a week span where you took some days off and you was just like, no, I'm cool. There's nothing wrong with taking these moments off. There's nothing wrong with staying down. There's nothing wrong with hitting and being in these positions. It's okay to, fall a little bit, but you can't stay there. You cannot stay there. So after the race, we crossed and we were actually in fourth. And I was just like, oh man, we got fourth. We broke the Canadian record, the fastest Canadian team ever in the history of Canada, but we got fourth. Any athlete, especially in the Olympic stage, you don't want to go to that finals and not come away with a medal. Medal makes everything better. So we're doing the interviews and, everybody's a little discouraged, but interviews are just like, man, you guys just broke the Canadian record. And we're all just like, man, who cares? Who cares about none of that, man? So then we're doing one interview, and then somebody else said, I think you guys might got third. We're like, what are you talking about? It clearly says fourth. And he says, no, the Americans stepped out of their lane. And we're like, oh, so we're watching the board. It's Jamaica, Japan, Canada. I'm like, oh, snap, we got third. I was like, oh, yo, we just became Olympic medalists. And then the mood changed. Then it was just like, man, this is crazy. I remember the race finished at 10:30. We didn't get back to the Olympic Village until 3:30 because we were taking interviews, media, and all that stuff. But then a day later, we went to the ceremony. And I remember checking my phone after, and I seen so many people hitting me up and shouting me out of the ceremony and stuff like that. But the one message that I saw was a message from my mom. It says, hey, you did it. And I was just like, that's all I needed. That's all I needed. That's all I needed. That's all I needed, man. Because the one person who knows me the best, she acknowledged it. She said, man, I see the hard work you've been paying off. And that's all that I needed, man. So that was the story up until there, man.
I love that. Yeah, it sounds like it was an emotional journey, if anything, man. How did it make you feel when you saw that message from your mom?
It was good, man, because I'm just like, I'm in a position now where I can help her. I was in a position where I could help her with, bills and all these different things. So, but I was probably after that moment, I probably only looked at the medal like maybe 3 or 4 times on my own, because I'm just like, well, what's next?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I know there's like I've read stories of like athletes and professional like soccer players, whatever sport that they might be in. It's like they are chasing that career or that thing for so long, that medal or whatever it is, and they do it. The hard work pays off. They get the acknowledgement, the love, everything, and then they think like, what's next? And I don't know if you felt this, but like from the people that I was reading, they were saying like they had a bit of an identity crisis in the sense that like, let's just take a sprinter, for example.
Mm-hmm.
That they are a sprinter. That's how they like, that's the relationship they have with themselves. I am a sprinter. This is what I do. This is me. But then as soon as that's over, it's like, all right, so now what do I do? Like
Yeah.
my skills were in that space. Now what can I offer the world? So I don't know if you had any of those moments, or you had those thought patterns in your head. Like, how did that work for you since 2016? Because I guess since then you've sort of moved away from the Olympics.
Yeah, man. For me, that's a must. I'm glad you brought that up, man. That's a very common thing in most athletes. And for me, I knew that I was more than that. I knew that I was more than that from the day that I was 16 years old. Matter of fact, I remember telling to myself, I was like, I remember telling myself, I don't think I was called to play sport. I'm good at it, having some good results from it, opening doors, but I don't think that's what I was called to do. And I was just like, man, there's something there. And I was searching, training, doing sport, but I was searching because I knew that that wasn't it for me. I just believe that there is so much more that we can offer, and we shouldn't limit ourselves to one thing, right? But you got to search for it. So I was always, I got into writing when I was, 18, 19. And then I got into speaking and different things as well too. But I just knew that the transition, every athlete got to understand, you can't play sport forever. You can't escape Father Time. Your body at some point is going to take its toll. So for me, man, I always knew earlier that I wasn't going to be defined by just that. I don't want to just be known as just an athlete, because you're not doing yourself a justice. You're selling yourself short. So for me, I knew that. And because I knew that, I searched.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what did that journey look like afterwards? And did you go straight into writing and speaking, or like were there other opportunities that were already lined up?
Yeah. So at 20, I figured out what, at least I believed that that I was doing the thing that God called me to do, and I figured what that voice was. So for me, it was speaking, and it came in different revenues. Sometimes you don't know what you're good at until somebody tells you. So for me, it was just like people would say, "Man, Akeem, you give great advice," and I'd be like, I don't think so." But they'd be like, "Akeem, you're a great listener." I'm just like, "Oh, I appreciate it." So small stuff like that. So when I wasn't doing the sport and I was at home, because in track you're basically running for like 10 months. So you get like a month and a half, 2 months off. So when I wasn't training or in track, I was speaking and encouraging and trying to develop a way how to tell my story in a way that will be receivable and relatable. And then from there, I started writing and I started trying to figure out how do I get my voice on paper. So I just kind of just played with those things, but I also practice with it. Like when I'm the type of guy, like when I'm in something, I do it 100%. And when I'm not, I'm not. Right? Because when you distribute all these different things, when you give 25% here, 25% here, what's the most you can get out of 100 if you only give 25%? You only get 25%. You can't excel with 25%. So for me, man, I just at that time I was just searching and trying to figure out, and then eventually it came. But yeah, man, that's kind of how that started.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it seems like you're doing a good job of it because like the messages that you put out like fully resonate with it. And I think that's what got us connected because our energies were very similar, like you on the same wavelength, same mindset. So one quick question that I wanted to ask you, actually, going back to the day of the Olympic sprint, just before we get into the final few questions. So you were saying about like just before the gun goes off, you think you've got that 30-second of doubt. Do you think that just that those 30 seconds is what makes the difference between someone who's a winner and someone who loses? Even if you've trained the same amount of experience, everything the same, does it come down to those 30 seconds and how you deal with it?
Yeah, man. So that 30-second happened during the warm up. And I think most races are won and lost during the warm up. So before you even get to the starting line, the starting blocks, because in that moment, you got to make sure you're having a good warm up, your body's flowing well, but you also got to make sure that your mind is fully on pace because you don't know what can happen when you get out there. One of the things that I struggled with at the beginning of my career was not paying attention to my lane, right? Like I'd be like, man, he had a great start and I'm trying to keep up with him. And it's throwing off my rhythm. It's throwing off my cadence because I was focused on him and not my lane. So it's that thing of, man, like it's just the leading up to it because you don't know what's going to happen once you get out there. Somebody might false start. Well, now you got to call it back. So now you probably had the best start of your life, but it was a false start. So you got to come back. Can you do it again? I don't know. So it's those mental battles before the race even starts, telling yourself, I don't know what's going to happen, but I got to make sure that I focus on myself. Because it's so easy to get distracted there. You get to the starting line and you see thousands of people screaming and saying whatever. And then you have people at the starting blocks who are beating their chest and jumping and doing all this thing. They're on a different routine. In the midst of the chaos, can you be calm?
I love that, man. Yeah. So literally the opportunity is won or lost before the opportunity even shows up or happens. I love that because let me just give you an example from my life. Like something as simple as this podcast. Like I developed a routine just before going into it, but I can't rush from doing the last thing I was doing and then like, all right, cool, let's hit record. Like there's a routine for 20 minutes beforehand. And I've seen if I don't go through that, meditate, say some affirmations, get to the right energy flow so I can have a good time, so I can ask the right question. This is all unscripted, but it's just energy flowing. That I trust myself to guide me for the whole hour, hour and a half, And I've seen the days where I haven't done that. And I just, I tricked myself and thinking, maybe I don't need it, it's fine. And then 2 minutes before I just jump on it. And it's absolute crap. I know it's crap as well because I'm not in the right mind frame. So it was lost before I even hit record. So I love what you said there, man, because it's so true. So just to get into the final few questions then, I mean, with everything you've learned and the journeys, the experiences, the memories, everything that you've garnered so far, is there anything different that you would tell the 18-year-old Akeem, and what would you share to those who are around about that age now in their lives?
Man, At 18, man, I was a little different than most people, man. I was so disciplined that it was kind of scary, man. Like I never went out like that, where most 18-year-olds are partying and stuff. I never cared about none of that. So at 18, I would tell myself, man, find joy daily, um, and that could mean, you know, going for a walk and seeing the outside world. That could mean going to get ice cream at a random day, finding the joys in the small things that we're around in our world, you know, finding the joy. And that's something that I had to really teach myself these past 2 years, what joy is. How do you find joy? You can find joy in the toughest of times if you know where to look, if you know how to look. So for those moments, I would say joy, man. Find joy in the peace, in being okay, even though your situation is not okay. Because in the end, it will be okay.
Yeah, hindsight is 2020, isn't it? Every single time you look back, you think, that wasn't that bad. But when you're in the moment, that's how you deal with it. Like in the moment is what matters, and after it's all well and good to say, oh yeah, that turned out to be fine. It's all worked out for the better. But then when you're in that moment, you can't see the bigger picture. And I think someone that I interviewed, Garen Jones, who I think would be good for you to connect with. So after the show, I'll connect you guys up. But like
Absolutely.
he was saying, you can't, what did he say? You can't see the picture. No, what did he say? You can't see I want to get it right. He said you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. And yeah, I wanted to get it right because that's the reaction I had when I heard him say it. And it's true. You have to physically come outside of your body and your mind to think how I don't know how all of the pieces of this puzzle are going to connect, but they will. This isn't the only moment. This moment doesn't happen in isolation. Like it will connect with other moments to create your future, your life.
Yeah.
So don't just think that this is the end of your life. This isn't the defining moment. That there are other moments that will come. And another thing I want to quickly share, which I haven't really talked about, which it's an idea that I really love that I heard someone say. Oprah was interviewing someone, and the guy was saying he just like a perspective that Einstein said to himself, which helped him through the battles he was facing at the time, was, I just want to think like God. And when he said that, it really hit home because God, is someone who we see as sitting above us. He or she is sitting above us, looking down. If we can physically come out of our mind and look objectively at life, how are all the pieces of the puzzle connected? If I can see what he sees, because he sees the full picture, he's not in the frame. He can see, he created the frame, like he can see it. So if we can train ourselves to think like that, then we have a bit more faith that things are going to work out. Maybe I don't need to overreact. I don't need to be worried or anxious. Let me just do what I can do in this moment, and everything else will follow the way it needs to follow. So it seems like that's the journey you've been on as well, mentally and emotionally.
Yeah, man. I think I have a lot of faith, man. I have a lot of faith that, God doesn't put you through something just to put you through it. He's either trying to stretch you, or he's either trying to get you to learn a lesson, or he's either trying to get you to seek him first. So if one can put all those together, man, regardless, like I've probably read the story of Job this year alone, probably like 16, 17 times. That's my favorite story. Here you have an individual who blameless, doesn't do, did everything as godly as possible. I don't know a man who is in the Bible as close as holy as Job is. But at the same time, he was tested. Just because you believe in Christ doesn't mean that it's going to be a smooth sailing one. Doesn't mean that things aren't going to make sense at times. But that's why it says, lean not on your own understanding, man. And you got to have faith in something. You got to have faith in something.
Can you real quick just tell that story? Because I haven't read it myself, but I feel like I should
Job?
now that you said it. Yeah. Please just share it.
Man. All right. So Job was this man, holy man, right? And he had a bunch of kids. And he did everything the right way. I'm talking about he was so right living with himself, man, that like he would make sacrifices for his kids before they even done something bad. Like, so he would kill lambs and he would offer it to God before his, he covered his kids before they even sinned. That's a different type of holy. That's a different type of holy, right? And so then the story goes, Satan was roaming around earth and he was looking for somebody. But, God said, why don't you test my man Job over here? And Satan was just like, man, if I go and test Job, he's going to rebuke you. And God was just like, nah, you can do whatever you want. Just don't touch him. Satan was like, all right, cool. So he had a bunch of kids, right? So on this day, all of his kids died. All of his kids died. Every single one. Just tragic events came. One of them said that they were in the house. The four corners of the house came falling down. Kids died. He had a bunch of servants. He was very rich. So all his servants came and said, man, like, your kids, this person, he passed away. This person, he passed away. This person, he passed away. All your cattle, all your farm, they passed away. And he was just like, what? All in this day? So Satan comes back and says, man, he may be a little strong because he hasn't cursed you yet. But Satan was just like, let me touch his body, because I know that when an individual is in physical pain, they're going to rebuke you. I know that for sure. He was like, okay, cool, but just don't take his life. So Satan comes back and he tortures Job. He's sore, he's hurting, he's in pain. Everything is taken from him. Every single thing that he had is completely taken from him. It was so bad. He got to the point where his wife was just like, man, are you sure you don't just want to get this over with and just curse him and just be done? And he was just like, woman, what are you talking about? Am I just supposed to accept the good and not take the bad? But he was in a dark place. He was in such a dark place that it was part of him. He didn't curse God, but there was part of him where he was very close. So four of his closest friends came from across another country. And they're there talking, trying to counsel him, trying to pick him up, uplift him, tell him that just like, man, this is just because things are happening doesn't mean it's not going to get better. All the stuff that you want your friends to tell you when you're in a bad moment, this is what they were telling him. But Job wasn't necessarily trying to hear it. He was listening, but he wasn't trying to hear it. So then there was this other guy, this younger man, probably about, if I had to say, in his 80s, 20s. He wasn't in it. He wasn't around Job and his four friends. I really think that when you're in an environment, it can consume you because you become that environment. But this younger man, he wasn't in it. He was young. He was still figuring out certain things. But because he wasn't in it, he provided different perspectives. He was just like, you can't expect to walk through a life and not have bad things happen to you, no matter what happens. It's inevitable. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how much good you bring to the world. Things are going to happen to you. But you got to understand that it doesn't mean that God still isn't good. It doesn't mean that he hasn't blessed you. It doesn't mean that he still hasn't provided great things into your life before. If he did it once, he can do it again. And Job was just like, you gotta point there. You got to point there. But still, I got to see. So one day, God appears to Job and he's telling him, and God was just like, man, everybody wants something in this world. If you are in the power and seeing that I am in, that I got to make sure that I put everybody on the right track and making sure that they're believing and making sure that they're doing all these things. If you were supposed to be in my position, how do you think you would handle it? And finally, Job was just like, man, you're absolutely right. I apologize. Forgive me for those weak moments. He never cursed him until that time, but he did say, forgive me for those weak moments. But then here's the hindsight. Towards the end, the story goes on that Job was rewarded 2 times fold for everything that he lost. So he became rich again. He got twice as many cattle and cows and oxen as much as he had before. Then his family came from all over to comfort him, to be there for him. And everything seemed like it was better in the end. However, one of the most common things that people miss in that story is, yes, he did get rewarded 2 times fold. He still had to take those losses, and that pain never exactly went away. That's the story of Job, man. Beautiful
Yeah,
story.
I love it. Yeah, no, it is. It is. No, I gotta go listen back to that again. There's a lot of messages and nuggets to take away from that. It's one of those stories you can just keep reading over and over, and you pick up different things each time as well, I'm sure. So, but yeah, man.
Absolutely.
One of the stories, just before we get to the last two questions, one of the stories that I've read similar to that, over and over again, is The Alchemist. I don't know if you've read that.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Paulo Coelho.
Yeah. That book I've read about 8 or 9 times now. Every time I learn something new. I love that book because it's a guide to life, man. It's a guide to life. That's what it is. So, but yeah. So just to get into the second last question, which is, if there's one statement that you could write that goes into a time capsule for generations from now to read, what would that one statement be? And all of your videos, all your text, everything's wiped from the internet. So this one statement is all that people can go off of when they see the name Akeem Haynes.
Oh man, I would say, man, only you don't define me, I define me. And I just mean, like, man, there are so many opinions in this world, and everybody will tell you what to do, and everybody will tell you how to do it, and everybody will tell you the path that you should take. But what if that path isn't designed for you? Does that mean that you should still take it? What if you were meant to do it the hard way? What if you were meant to take an unorthodox route in order to achieve certain things? What if the path that is traditional isn't for you? What if you weren't born to be traditional? You cannot be defined by what people say and what people try to tell you. Even the people listening to this, when I say something, I want you to go define it for yourself, because we have defining things. We can write down the same recipe, how to make chicken, the same thing, do the exact same thing. And I guarantee you, if there was 5 of us making it, it would taste differently. So you have to define you, and don't let anybody else define you. You got to define that for you. You define yourself. You and God. God has a different plan. Can you follow his? That's the ultimate goal. But you define you. You define you. Define that for yourself, man. Don't let somebody tell your story.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. I read somewhere, I think Gary Vee said, like, he posted a few years back now. I remember him saying, man has a plan and God laughs. And it's just stuck with me, because he's up there watching as you're like coming up with all these plans and these ideas and things that you're worrying about for the future. Like, oh my God, how is this going to work out? And, what are people going to think of me when I do this, or shall I do that? And he's just laughing, thinking that none of that's going to happen. Like, chill out. None of that is going to happen. And you don't realize until later on. But it's just, again, coming back to the story of Job, like, you need to have the faith through the tough times that it will work out the way it needs to work out, So,
man, sometimes I'm wondering, just like, is he up there eating popcorn when
exactly.
we're at this crossroads, and he was just like, go left. But we're like, nah, we're going to go right. And he was just like, all right, well.
Yeah. You'll see, motherfucker. Like, you'll see. Give it a few months. You'll be back.
You do you.
Yeah, no. I definitely, I make jokes like that with one of my closest friends as well. And we just laugh because we think, like, we've been through so many challenges and adversities personally in our own lives. And we're just like, he's just up there laughing. Like, there's this one, just as we think, oh, it's working out perfectly. Things are going well. Maybe this will be the one. And then something goes wrong, and he's just, yeah. So you just have to keep going, man. And just real quick, one more quote that just comes to mind, that's stuck with me is by Winston Churchill. And he says, when you're going through hell, keep going. That's the only way you can come out. That's the only way you come out of it, man. You can't quit. You can't go back. Like, and you certainly don't want to stay there and burn. Keep going through it. Keep going through it, because you're going to come out a stronger character. So every time an adversity or challenge comes to me, that's what I just keep saying to myself: keep going, man. Like, he did it. Many people before him have done it, and that's what gives me the perspective of my life. Because I'm thinking, if they've done it, everything's been strategically positioned to bring me here. This technology, the fact that there's Instagram, so we could talk. There's
absolutely.
Steve Jobs created the MacBook. the phone that we speak to each other through, this webcam, everything is strategically created so that we could have this moment right now. And that might sound selfish because people might think, oh, so you think the world, works around you. No, it's just like keeping things in perspective that people come before me to create a platform for me to now share this message. And
Mhm.
so when you're going through adversity or challenge, just think about that. Like there's other people who have come before you that had to sacrifice something just so you could now have a space and opening on this planet to have life. So yeah, man,
Man, I always say, man, you got to respect history while you're making your own.
I love that, man. Yeah, I love that. So
Because we're doing it every step of the way, but it's been paid for us.
yeah, definitely. So just the final question then to touch on is you've lived a long healthy life now, and you come to the end of your life, whatever age that might be. What's the legacy you want to leave behind?
Man, that's a great question, man. Let me use this analogy. On a tombstone, you got the day you were born and the day of your demise, right? And I always said, man, that dash in the middle, because there's that dash in the middle. That dash is going to define who you are. That dash is going to be that legacy that you create. That dash is going to say, Akeem was, Akeem is, whomever. And I always said to myself, and I'm a man that's a very big thinker. So you have to think about these things. You have to think about, that time when it does come. Obviously, I pray that everybody has a long, prosperous time on this planet. But I always said, man, I don't want a small funeral. Like I want the house to be packed. And I want the house to be extremely packed because that means that I've impacted somebody in some way. I don't want a small wedding because I mean I haven't put myself out there to be a light for those in need, to those who may need something. It's all about impact, man. I want to make a positive impact. That the very presence that I enter a room when my name is said, it automatically makes people feel better. It's not about me. It's way bigger than I am. I'm one person. But there's a reason why people like Martin Luther King, Winston Churchill, and all these people, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, are still talked about long before their time because it was bigger than them. And I just pray that the good Lord allows me and blesses me with the opportunities and the platforms to be able to speak to his people, to be able to be that message. Because he's flowing through us. He's flowing through us. But are we going to be courageous enough to share that flow with the world?
That's a good way to end this, man. I love it because you're on your journey, figuring out who you are and how you can serve the world, and I think you're doing an amazing job, man. So, how can people follow you if they want to see your journey, what you're about, and what you might get up to in the future?
Yeah, man. Instagram, Underdog AKH, Twitter, Underdog AK. You always at the website at www.akeeminspires.com. And yeah, and that's usually where I'm at, man. But man, I just got to say, man, I love what you're doing, man. And even before we even jumped on, man, your productivity is on a whole nother level, man. And I just believe that when you put so much effort into something, it's gonna flourish. It's gonna
Uh,
flourish.
Thank you so much,
Has,
man.
man. It's already has, man. I love it,
No,
man.
no,
This
thank
has
you so
been
much.
it's been good, man. It's
Yeah,
been
yeah. No, it has. I love this, man. We definitely need to do this again. And it's having people like you on, man, that are inspiring the world, changing it, making it better, like creating your own path, just providing a platform for legends, man. That's all it is. Providing a platform for legends because people need to hear it. People need to hear it. It's not just this. It's not just in one part of the world as well. People with different stories, different backgrounds, different cultures, like they're all doing something. Like, and we was having this conversation with my dad actually, and we're saying like it's crazy because we live in most of the time we're born in a town
yeah.
and that's the town that we see for the rest of our life, or maybe the town that's closest to it. That's as far as we go, and that's it. But there's a whole planet out there. How do you know how other people are living, what their tradition, their culture is? Like you can learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you not be curious? Like sometimes you have to ask yourself, is this it? That's how it
Mm-hmm.
starts. That's how it starts. Your boundaries and your thinking process expands when you ask yourself, is this it? No, it's not. And we have the technology like YouTube, Instagram to see how are other people living. So yeah, man, I thank you so much for doing what you're doing, being courageous enough to chase your dreams and your passion. And we definitely need to do this again.
It's a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me, man. Anytime, man. You just anytime, bro. Anytime, man.